Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Leadership Success Navigator webinar series. We have David Liddell, President and founder of SKYE Business Solutions, here to present today's webinar, Impact, Make It Happen. David is an executive coach and leadership development expert. He's going to entertain you in this next hour and provide you with some tips and techniques that will improve your leadership skills today. Please welcome David Liddell.
We're here to talk to you today about leadership. The topic is Impact, Make It Happen. And this is really for anybody in a leadership position or anybody aspiring to be in a leadership position. To give you a sense of how it works, for those of you who have not been on before, 60 minutes. We're going to try to keep it right to the hour so people can get back to work. We do this every month, so we'll have a new topic every month. I'll be announcing next month's webinar, the topic at the end of today's session. And I want to be sure everyone has downloaded their worksheet. You'll be using that today. And I will give you an image of that at some point when I get into the topic itself. But I would like you to make sure you have downloaded that. And if you haven't, this would be a great time to do it. I'm going to just open up the presentation as I continue to talk here. What we will do is near the end, we're going to open it up for questions. If you do have a question that you would like to post, make sure you jot it down. There's a Q&A section, and we'll make sure we capture that for you so that we'll capture it on our end and we'll answer it for you. What we're going to do is we're going to keep the lines muted so that we don't get a lot of background noise. And of course, as we do every month, we'll make sure that we post the webinar online with the worksheet itself. So if you want to play it back for anyone within your organization, you can do so. So I'm going to jump right into this, and hopefully we don't have any more technology issues. And of course, the question is, when you think about impact, make it happen, today's topic is really about how do you, as a leader, impact others. And since our topic this month, our theme of the month is motivating others, and we know how difficult that can be. Motivating others is not always simple because everyone's motivated a little differently by different things. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to ensure that we are conducting ourselves, we're behaving ourselves the right way so that we are influencing and having an impact. So the question, does leadership really matter? And of course, the rule in PowerPoint is never to start with a chart. So I'm going to start with a chart here to share with you a little bit about how leadership does matter. This was a Business Week Hay Group survey done back in 2009. Pardon me. And you can see here the top 20 best companies for leadership. You'll notice over on the right-hand side where you can see that they outperformed the S&P 500 over a number of years, year 1, year 3, year 5, 10-year even, they've outperformed them. So leadership in itself does matter. It has, leadership is essential to delivering, driving the direction of the organization, setting strategy, getting people on board, and of course, everyone on the line probably understands that the impact that you have is based on the relationships that you have with individuals. So what I'd like you to think about as we go through this is, how is it that you can have an impact on your organization? So let's talk about leadership impact. I always like to start with a real world example. Someone might know that this is Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks. If any of you are coffee buffs and you've had a Starbucks, you know that they make very strong coffee. But here are a few facts about Starbucks that you may or may not know. They were founded in 1971. Howard Schultz purchased them in 1987. There were only 17 stores in existence. You might be surprised to know that there are over 18,000 today worldwide, with a stock price of about $90 a share. So that market cap I have listed up there is probably a little higher than that. But think about this. This is a company that sells coffee in the average from $2.50 to $5 a cup, when the national average is under $1.50. The key to his success, and everything you'll read about this individual, is he really knows how to relate to people, and he knows how to inspire others. And that's a real key to understand, that everybody in the organization, from the top all the way down, has a direct impact on the people around them through their behavior, establishing culture. So do believe, as you go through this, think about, well, how can I have an impact? Can I have an impact? If you ask yourself, the answer is Absolutely. So what I'm going to talk about for the rest of today's session, I'm going to talk about 5 specific steps. So everything I do with these webinars and any kind of training and development we do, I want individuals, whether it's a webinar, a detailed training session, a coaching executive session, I want you to take one thing away from today that you can use. And with 5 steps here, I should be able to give you some ammunition to do so. So let me touch on each of those steps here. When you're working with an individual, and you're thinking, well, how can I impact this person? How can I get them to think differently, act differently, perform better? The first thing you have to think about is, well, what behavior do I want to see? The second question is can this individual do it? And do they understand why? Is it worth it to them? And there's going to be consequences to their behavior or to your behavior towards them. And the idea is you've got to figure out what those consequences are. And this will make more sense as we go through this. Then you've got to arrange consequences effectively because everyone's different. I talked about that in the beginning. And then you have to purposefully practice. And what I mean by purposefully, coaching and helping individuals grow is not an accidental exercise. Sure, it can happen accidentally, but you want to, as a leader, you have to be thinking about the professional development and growth of the people around you. And in most cases, they're going to be people who report to you, but they can be peers. You can have an impact on people around you and even managing up at times. A little more challenging. I recommend if you're going to do it carefully. So this is the worksheet I mentioned earlier. Hopefully you've downloaded it. And I'm going to encourage you as we go through this, I'm going to point to certain numbers. There's 5 areas corresponding to these 5 steps. I'm going to be asking you to fill this in as we go along in certain areas. So what do you want? I want you to think about the people around you, the people who report to you. And believe me, leaders impact their business through people. They don't, if you think about how leaders manage the business and lead the people, as I always say, the way they have an impact is really one individual at a time. If you're leading a team, you say, I'm going to improve the performance of my team. But realistically, you're improving the performance of individuals. And incrementally, those gains improve the performance of the team. So for a minute, I want you to just do a mental exercise. I want you to take a moment and think about your employees or those who you influence through your leadership. Just take a moment and what behaviors do you want more of and what behaviors do you want less of? And these behaviors are things you witness. These are observable behaviors of those people. So I'll just give you a second to think about it. Now, hopefully you have some ideas because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to get your hands on your worksheet. And question number 1 says, identify the behavior you want to see. So what I'd like you to do is, out of the people that you were thinking about, those people where you'd like to see improved performance, better behavior, different behavior, think of one individual. Just take one, and this individual it will be the one person you're going to work on throughout the course of this worksheet and this exercise. Identify what you'd like that person to do differently. So I've given you a couple examples here. These are pretty basic, but I think you'll get the idea. I would like Jack to meet 2 decision makers per week. That might be someone in a sales capacity. I would like Mary to take more responsibility in solving problems. That could be anybody reporting to you. So take a minute and jot down under question 1 on the worksheet, what would you like to see this person do differently? I'll give you about 30 seconds. Why don't you go ahead and jot that down? Okay, about another 10 seconds. Now the question is, how do you get somebody to change their behavior? There are options like yelling at people. I don't suggest that. You can tell them to just change their behavior, but you'll oftentimes get met with an odd look and limited results. Behavior really comes from their desire to change. So on question 2 on your worksheet, I would like you to answer this question. And I'll give you some other questions to consider as you're writing this down. But can he or she do it? And is it worth it? And what I mean by that is, can they do it? Is, do they have it when they're within their excuse me, within their ability to do it? Is it so far outside of their normal behavior that it'd be difficult to do it? Some people are naturally assertive, and some aren't. If you need someone to be highly, highly assertive who's not an assertive person at all, that could be very difficult. So the question might be, no, they can't do it. They could, but over an extended period of time could stress them out. So I want you to think about, can they do it? Do they think they can do it? And of course, a really important question in all that is, are they motivated to do it? Because people fundamentally have to be motivated to change. Why would you change the way you do something unless it had some sort of benefit? Now, some other things to think about is, if no, why not? What is holding them back? Is it something like confidence? Is it their skill? Is it attitude? Is it perhaps resources that they have or don't have, or perhaps it's just their beliefs? The key to all of this is, if you think about it, is it worth it? Is there something fundamentally that's going to help them change what they do? Because everything we do as individuals is habitual, and changing habits takes a long time, and you need a reason to do it. So take a moment, and I'd like you to write down, answering that question, can he or she do it, and would they see it as worth it? Is there something that will motivate them? Give me another like 15, 20 seconds to jot that down. Now, hopefully if you got something there. I think this is really important. You know, if you're having a hard time writing this down, there are chances that you don't know this person all that well. And where you don't have to be terribly, terribly, personal and close, what you do need to know is what fundamentally is driving this individual. Now you'll notice here what I put up. I put the poll question up. What do you see as the most difficult challenge when trying to motivate others? I would love to get some feedback, which I will post to the group near the end here. Think about the people around you. Think about those who either work directly for you, adjacent to you, or you influence, or perhaps you mentor within the organization. What do you see as the most difficult challenge when trying to motivate others? So think about this as we go through the webinar. And what I'll do, as you type them in, I'll see them. I will broadcast the results very near the end so others can see some of the challenges you're facing on a day-to-day basis. All right, good. So let's move on to the next slide here. Now, I don't know if anyone's viewed this particular video on YouTube. It's a TED Talk, and I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. He has a great way of delivering a message, and you'll see he's got here. I'm just grabbing some of his concept, but he called them the golden circles, and I suggest viewing the video. It's only 20 minutes long, and you can just search on YouTube TED Talk Simon Sinek golden circles, and you'll get it. But what he talks about is how organizations operate. And they talk about most organizations operate the wrong way. They tell people what they do, how they do it, and then why they do what they do, when most people think about it the other way. if you can get people on board with why you do what you do, then tell them how you do it and what you do, it's far more compelling. And so the why, if you ask, if you ask somebody why they do what they do, and they can only say, well, I do it for the money. Well, is that really somebody that is fully committed to you, the organization? And oftentimes it's not, because they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Are they connected to the value of the business? Do they know what your business does? You might create a product, but how does that product add value to your customer's life? We talk about Apple as an amazing company, and Simon Sinek does the same thing in this particular video. They happen to make phones, iPhones, cell phones. Great, wonderful. A lot of companies make cell phones, but what's the experience the customer gets from the cell phone? What's the value? And if employees understand what you do, if someone works for Apple and they understand why they're doing what they're doing, they're actually providing an experience to the consumer, the person with the phone, connecting them with the world around them, connecting them to the people they care about, helping them run their businesses more effectively. That's why people do what they do. And what you have to do as leaders is get people to understand what it is your company does and connect them to the why. Why is it important? Not always easy to do, and it's almost virtually impossible if you don't know why you do what you do. So a big chunk of this, if you're going to try to get your employees to behave differently, should you want to do that, they have to believe in what you believe. And that has everything to do with the company's mission, vision, values, the value the customer receives, the end result benefit. And then as leaders, we need to connect them to that through success measures and how individuals see their contribution adding value to the company's overall value proposition. So the second question here is what you need to think about is, what do you believe about your business? What do you believe about what you do as a leader? And do the people around you believe what you believe in? So, if you think about leadership philosophy or a culture in an organization, it's driven by the leaders in the company and what they believe about their customers, what they believe about the employees. If the leadership of the top of an organization believed that it was to get results, you have to treat employees poorly and work them till their fingers bleed. If that was the belief within leadership at the very top, that trickles down to the organization, and that's what employees are going to feel. But if leaders believe that the success of the organization depends greatly upon how well everybody performs, and that each individual is motivated differently by different things, and has unlimited potential, that's going to be a different environment. So the question is, do they understand why they do what they do, why they work so hard, why they're so stressed out? And don't think it's about the money. The money is the end result. It's the outcome of all their hard work. It's the outcome of their contribution to the organization. The why has everything more to do with what they believe about the business. So fundamentally, if somebody were, I'll take Greenpeace, for example, whether you're a fan or not, somebody has to believe in the fundamental values of Greenpeace if they're going to work there. And I'm sure you don't make a lot of money at Greenpeace. Someone who works at Greenpeace is not likely to work on the New York Stock Exchange. Their set of values, what they believe, is completely different. So essentially, you've got to figure out what your value is, what you believe, and you will attract people who believe what you believe. I'm stealing a little bit of Simon Sinek's thunder here, but this is the essence of how do you impact people to change their performance. There's something called applied behavioral science, and I'd like to talk about that for a minute. And the essence of behavioral analysis is to view behaviors as a function of a person and their environment. So if something happens to precede the behavior, which will likely cause or influence that behavior, then that results in a consequence. We can't change a person, but we can influence the way they behave by shaping the environment they function within. So, we talk about, well, I want to influence somebody, or I want someone to change, or I want to change their attitude. Well, the way you do it is by changing your behavior or altering your behavior, which will impact or alter or have an influence on their behavior. So you can't tell people what to do. Well, you certainly can, but it doesn't have long-lasting. It does not have real long-lasting impact. Telling people what to do is just creating a bunch of people doing what you've told them to do, rather than influencing their beliefs and how they need to act within an organization to get the best results. So let's talk about that. So the trigger, the antecedent, it's the actual event. Something happened, and I'll give you some examples of this so it makes sense. There is the behavior, okay? So this is the behavior of the individual who's been affected by this trigger. And so there is essentially this behavior or this beliefs about the event can be rational or irrational depending on what the trigger is. And then there's a consequence. So let's explore this just a little bit further. If you think about your behavior, or actually let me back up. Think about an employee's behavior towards you, the way they produce something, whether they've made a mistake, whether they've done it well, how they interact with the world around them. That will impact your behavior, which will result in a consequence back to them. It's really quite that simple. So the question is, do you really have an impact? Well, the answer is you're already having an impact. So think about this for a minute. Regardless of whether you intend to have an impact, you are. So you're leading by example whether you want to or not. It's really quite simple. Leaders are viewed in the organization as those who set the standard, establish the culture, set expectations, and people watch their leaders very carefully. So don't think for a minute that people aren't having an impact. They are. And you'll love of course, you've got to love that character from the show, The Office. And hopefully none of you are just like him. So let's take an example of the ABC model. Employee provides you with a report you requested. You give negative feedback, which might be something that you would do. No, this isn't good. It's wrong. The employee will fix it, but walks away feeling less confident in their abilities, right? Now, this is a simple example, and you're probably faced with these every single day. How do I get the best result out of a negative situation? Well, let's look at this for a minute. You think about their behavior. Right, let me reverse that. Your behavior ends up being their consequences. So you're faced with their behavior, then you're going to respond. That will be your behavior. That's what they receive. Your behavior will impact how they see themselves, how they perform in the future, and whether or not they're going to change their approach, change their behavior. The question is it the behavior you want? Now, don't forget, a few moments ago, you wrote down specific behavior that you want to see change. So there's a number of ways to approach it. You could provide positive reinforcement, looking for the good, finding opportunity for growth. Now, that can't always happen, but certainly those are the opportunities when you see something happen that is positive, that's a plus, to point it out. With all this snow that we've been having, I think most of you, if not all of you, are within the earshot of all the snow that's been falling. I've noticed in my little town of Merrimack, New Hampshire, they have done a beautiful job of keeping the roads clean. It was really quite amazing. We've had years when we've had a fraction of the snow when it was a wreck, and they've done an outstanding job this year. I feel as though I've got to call them or at least send them an email saying, thank you, you've done a great job, because I'm sure all they get is a lot of complaints. I'm sure they wouldn't mind some positive reinforcement. I'd love to see this level of performance from them in years to come. There's a negative reinforcement, the verbal warning, which says, hey, we can't have this happen again. And then you get into the tough areas when you get into some real tough performance management dialogue, confrontation. It tends to be confrontational. Punishment or penalty, which is more severe. The key to all this is that the green arrows, this is where you're going to get most of your gains because you're looking for opportunity for individuals to grow. It's not coming at them in a negative connotation. So think of it this way, the green consequences that increase behavior and consequences that decrease behavior are in red. What's amazing about all of this is this has everything to do with people. It has very little to do with business. And what I mean by that is if you think about individuals, whether you're 5 years old, 15 years old, 25, 35, 105 years old, fundamentally, we're all just people, and we respond to different input. It's amazing when I learned how to coach little kids in soccer years and years and years ago, before I was trained to be a soccer coach, I spent a lot of time running around the soccer field telling kids what not to do. There was a dramatic increase in the kids' performance on the field, and these were 5 and 6-year-olds, when I stopped telling them what not to do and started telling them what they were doing well and to continue doing it. I learned that in soccer coaching school. You would think, well, how? Yeah, that's obvious. But you will find yourself with day-to-day stress and challenges and deadlines that you will default to a lot of telling people what not to do. You get a lot more from telling people what to do. And that's very, very important to understand. So the key with it, think about it. Effective consequences, if you can reward people with new assignments, getting them more involved in the business, perhaps providing them more resources, perhaps even special privileges. There's lots of ways to do it. Now, I'm not defaulting to, you notice the financial bullet was last. It's last on purpose. The idea there is financial rewards are good, but use them sparingly. And the key to all of this is really you've got to catch people winning at what they're doing. Reinforce, drive that performance that you want to see when you see it. Now, there's going to be instances where you can't, where it has to be you've got to nip things in the bud. But realistically, it's very, very important that you think about how you're going to do that. But remember one thing. The person behaving determines the meaning of the consequence. So you have to recognize that one size does not fit all with every individual. I just want to remind those of you on the line to provide a little feedback. I've only got a couple inputs here, or it looks like I've got one input on what do you see as the most difficult challenge when trying to motivate others. If you wouldn't mind just coming up with some ideas or thoughts, I'd love to have you put those in there again. I would love to share with the group. So let's go back to our example with your customer service rep. We talked about earlier, monthly report due. It's provided as an incomplete report, and then you have an irritated supervisor. I know everybody in the line, you've never, ever been irritated. That's good. but just in case you do get irritated in the future, there might be a better way. So let's look at the behavior, or the trigger for you. Employee provides an incomplete report. What's a better response? Well, let's look for the positives. There's always an upside. There's always a positive. There's always some sort of silver lining. And to coach and share with people, how is it that they can improve? You know, if you think about individuals, all they want to do is they want to do the best job possible. There are very few people that come to work and think, yeah, I'm going to mess with my manager today. I'm going to mess with my leader today, and I'm going to drive him or her crazy. That's my job today. Now, I know some of you are probably looking at each other or laughing or giggling and saying, ha ha, yeah, you know what? Even though you might think they're trying to do it, they're not. People come to work to do the best job they can. Sometimes they don't know, they don't recognize their own behavior, they don't have that mirror, they don't have that coach. For those of you who've been through an executive coaching exercise, or those of you who've done a 360 survey and been given that feedback, as much as it can be a little painful to hear it, it's useful, it's helpful. And that's what coaches do. So you're coaching the negatives and trying to get them to see how they can improve. And the consequence, and that's your consequence in this case, is the employee's confidence grows. And confidence is one of the most important elements for your teammates and the people who report to you. They will perform more effectively. They will more clearly be able to see the value in what they do, and they'll act in accordance with what's best for the organization more often. Well, this would be a good time to take you now back to the worksheet, question number 3. And I'd like you to think about the person who you've written down here. You've already answered questions 1 and 2, but I would like you to think about, what are the consequences, okay? What is the behavior, your behavior, that you could demonstrate, change, adjust for this particular individual that will trigger the behavior that you want from them? So think about what they want. Think about what will drive them, what will motivate them. So take a minute. Question 3 on the worksheet. I'll give you about 30 seconds or so to jot a few things down. And go. Another 5 seconds. Thank you for the answers coming in on the poll question. Really appreciate that. Okay, good. Now, at this point, you should have something here listed under question 3. This is one of the most difficult sections for most people, because when I'm in front of people and coaching them, I'll ask them very simple questions. What do they want from the people around them? What difference, where are the performance gaps? What if you were to advise them on what they could do differently, and they tell me they're very clear on what behavior they want, but when they look at themselves and say, well, how do I impact that? Well, you can't tell them. I mean, you can, but you don't get the result, the impact that you want. But you certainly can adjust their behavior through your behavior. People struggle with this. So this is not an easy one to fill in. So if you're stuck a little bit, don't worry. You can always come back after today's session and think about, what can I do differently to impact their belief system, how they perform, how they behave. There's always something you can do differently. So bottom line, it comes down to the positive reinforcement will drive what you want. And that's really key here. So as you think about what I'd like you to do next is just think about questions 4 and 5. So if you think about some of the consequences that would impact this individual, how do you arrange those? And what do you need to do differently? And this part of this is making a commitment to this individual. The reason why I only had you pick one person, so that you walk away today with focus. If you focus on one person, focus on one or two of their behaviors, and think about your behaviors that you can adjust to impact them, then there's a pretty good chance it's going to happen. So don't try to do this with 2 and 3 and 4 people. One person. I want you to think about the consequences and arranging them effectively. And then what is your commitment? So take a minute and jot down 4 and 5. And 5 is specifically, how can you ensure that this is going to happen? Why is this important for you to help this individual adjust their approach, adjust their behavior? So I'll give you a few more minutes. Pardon me, I meant to say a few more seconds. Another 10 seconds. All right, good. Keep this worksheet handy. When you walk away from this, I'd love you to practice it. Practice makes perfect. Part of this is you're trying to adjust their behavior, which is, their habits. But, we know how difficult it is to change a habit. The rule of thumb, it takes 21 days to change a habit. There's a lot of validity to that because it takes practice and persistence, and you just, it's one of those things you have to work at. Well, you driving their behavior is a function of you changing yours. So which means you've got to change your habits as well. So practice purposefully means just that. You need to practice it. And if you focus on the one person that I mentioned, it's going to make a huge difference. So let me talk about incentives. I said earlier, just be careful with incentives. But the key in all of this is don't use the incentives to compensate for your reluctance, or in this case, what it's saying on the side here, your failure to engage people and what motivates them. It really, honestly, if you think about it, when you ask people what motivates you, what drives you, what keeps you coming to work every day, and there are very few people who will save money, even salespeople who are on commission. It's not about the money. Yes, we need it. We have bills to pay, we have kids to send to college, we want to buy the new car, the bigger house, so on and so forth. Yeah, we all get that. But that's not a true motivator. It's more of a necessity. Yes, sure, at some level it is for certain people at different times in their lives. But as you, as you realize, as you go through your career, you realize it's not about the money. And I'm sure there are people on the line who have left a higher paying job for a lower paying job because they didn't like the company, the people they worked for, or the work wasn't interesting anymore. 3 key factors when you're trying to change people's behavior. Think about, does the consequence affect them perform positively or negatively? And the positive approach is going to get better results. And negatively means you might, that's your behavior. Does that set them back? The timing is critical. Don't wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to confront behavior that you've seen or want to see change. If it's something that needs to change, hit it early, be consistent about it, and make sure your message is very, very clear. But the sooner, the more context there is for you and the individual. And then this is likely from the performer's perspective, is the consequence is likely or unlikely, likely or unlikely to occur. That means, are you going to follow through? If you said, hey, don't do that anymore, or XYZ will happen. If XYZ doesn't happen, they know you're bluffing. They know they can get away with it. And that happens in organizations, in every organization. If there are no consequences for poor performance or poor behavior, what do you get? You get poor behavior and poor performance. You know that. So you've got to make sure the consequence is there, and it's going to have the impact that you want it to have on that individual. All right, we're getting close to the end here. So you want to drive the right behavior. One, it has to be valued by the person. So the reinforcement is your behavior. If what you're doing is not valued by the individual, meaning that consequence to them is not valued, it's not going to be worth much. If you said to a person, I'm going to give you a bigger title and more money, and they don't care about that stuff, you're not driving anything. It's highly contingent upon your behavior. Now, we've been talking about your behavior all along, but your consistent behavior. Are you consistent with your approach? Do people believe that there are going to be teeth in what you're trying to drive toward? Okay, if you're not consistent from person to person, if you don't follow through, there's a very good chance they're not going to believe you. And the follow through could be positive or negative. I talked about the timing. It needs to be delivered immediately. Don't wait 3 weeks. They won't have the context, and they won't know what you're talking about, and it needs to be delivered frequently. Okay, if you want to change someone's behavior, if you're looking for the positives, find those positives. Remind them of how good they're doing what they're doing. There's always, every single day, there's an opportunity to coach people, be a mentor for them, help them see what they're doing as a positive. All right, so let me just go through this one more time. This is on your worksheet, but this is identifying. First of all, you need to identify the behavior you want to see. And then when I talk about behavior, think about the individual. What is going to help them perform more effectively in their role? What is going to help them achieve the next level of success? What's going to help them think about reaching their full potential? Remember, it has to be of value to them. Is it worth it to them, and are they capable of doing it? I'm a big fan of challenging people to their limit and then just a little bit more, getting them outside their comfort zone. Don't go too far, you might break them, but you've got to go far enough so they're being challenged, and I call that the learning zone. Make sure your behavior is driving the right consequences. Okay, and those consequences, again, have to be meaningful to them. And those consequences can be arranged. There could be a different set of consequences in terms of moving people to higher levels of success. And then, of course, all of it comes down to you and how you practice what you're trying to do. And practice is consistent until it becomes a habit for you. And knowing each individual, meaning what motivates each individual. For instance, things like, are people motivated by success? Are they motivated by helping people? Think about people who are in the healthcare profession, people who don't get paid a lot of money, but are work at hospitals, and there are many of those. Why do they do it? The hours can be crappy. It can be very difficult work. Why do they do it? Because they're motivated by helping people. So make sure you're practicing purposely in terms of what you do to drive the right performance. All right, so we're going to take questions in just a minute. Just let me remind you about next month's webinar. It's on March 31st. A little further, we try to do them every 4 weeks. This one's pushed out a little bit further, which means the April webinar will come a little earlier. But this is going to be on the right, we call it the right leadership mindset. There's a system that we use or a model we use on teaching leaders the right mindset on how they need to work in the business as well as on the business. On the business is making it better, improving it, driving the performance of the organization through people. In the business is what I call getting stuck in the vortex, getting stuck in the day-to-day, and not lifting your head up to see what's going on around you. And that's what we call our 5 roles of leadership. We'll be talking about that next month. Hope everyone can make it. We'll make it very interesting. And we talk about the mindset. Leaders have to come to the table with the right mindset. If they don't, they're setting themselves up for um, poor leadership skills, and they're not helping others in the organization. So with that, we have about roughly 10 minutes left. Oh, and what I'm going to do, actually, before I go to the questions, I'd like to broadcast the results. Hopefully they're showing up here. If they're not, someone can let me know. But here's, what do you see as the most difficult challenge when trying to motivate others? Counteracting negative attitudes that can come from just one or two people on the team. And, as we talked about that, what are these negative negative attitudes? Where do they come from? And I'm asked is how do I change someone's attitude? And I tell you what, it's not easy, but it's possible. And you change attitudes through people's beliefs. So if you have uh, one or two individuals on the team, you have to talk about you have to talk with them about their attitude and figure out what beliefs they have that are driving this negative attitude. The next one is motivating without direct authority, using influence. Well, what's interesting about that, and this is how I try to teach all the leaders I work with, is you don't have any authority. Now, that's not entirely true. It's a little play on words here. In fact, you don't have power. Um, and everybody in the organization, including leaders who have authority or power, should drive performance through influence. And influence is about how you develop trust, respect, how you communicate, how you value others, how they see you. And those are the things. That's a better way to go at it no matter what. So yes, it's challenging. I agree, and these are skills that anybody can learn as leaders and even as just individuals, individual contributors. How to handle people with low self-esteem? Yeah, that's a real tough one. That in itself is trying to build up people's confidence through any means possible. And what I mean by that is you've got to be looking out for the positives. And these are ones, people with low self-esteem are very sensitive to any sort of criticism. Now, I'm not saying you need to baby people, but what you need to do is find a way, if these people truly are valuable to the organization, is look for the positive, look for the full potential, and ensure that they are getting the support they need and the feedback, the positive feedback they need. And then the last one here is finding their hot button. And I think what I think that means is what truly motivates that person, what gives them that fire in the belly. And honestly, part of that, if some people it's pretty clear, pretty straightforward. You have to listen to what they say, how they say what they say, how they solve problems, how they interact in group settings. These are the things that will help you determine what people's hot buttons are. And we use different techniques to help leaders figure that out. Some people are tough. There's a small percentage of the population that are kind of a blank slate, real tough to figure out, or they have not a blank slate, but they're not transparent at all. Uh, those ones can be very difficult, but there is a way to do that. And some people think, well, do I have to become buddy and friends with the people who report to me? And the answer is no. But what you need to know is you need to try to get close enough to them to understand what they value, what they believe, um, help them see how their contribution um, adds value to the organization and adds value to the customer, how what they receive from your product or service, and those sorts of things. As you get to know them and learn about what makes them tick, oftentimes the hot button will come out. All right, perhaps we could go to a few questions if we have any listed here.
Yes, David, we have a couple of questions. First one that came in. People are motivated by different things. How do you know what motivates them? Is there an easy way to figure this out?
Yeah, I guess I sort of touched on that. That I think that relates to the hot button question. Maybe that's the same individual, but people are motivated by different things. But fundamentally, as you get down to kind of human beings need to know, are they trusted? Are they respected? Uh, is their contribution valued in the organization? Are they part of something? Are they part of a team? Are they part of an organization? Uh, Knowing what motivates them is really helping them see, or pardon me, is listening carefully to how they see the world. One of the techniques we use is we teach people to use the DISC style assessment, and that's that goes back to the algorithms that were developed by Marston back in the 1930s, 1950s. But these are tools that help people understand, are you driven by results? Are you driven by uh, uh, influencing people? Are you driven by being part of a team? Do you like structure? Do you like stability? Are you all about data and analyzing? There's a framework, and I just kind of ripped through the DISC terminology. I use it pretty much every time I work with a leadership team, especially a senior management team, so that they can understand that each person is motivated differently. But if you can develop and learn how that framework works, that's a very quick way of doing it. If that's not something you're keen on doing, ask questions. Figure out how people think, figure out how they solve problems, deal with conflict, and how they drive performance themselves within the organization. That will usually be a key. But no, it's not easy is the answer.
Our next question is, how can you influence an employee to do something they don't necessarily want to do?
I recommend hitting them with a sharp stick. No, I don't recommend that at all. That's a joke. Don't hit anybody. Not a good idea. I think part of this is understanding. There are employees and organizations that fundamentally or just viscerally are against certain things, meaning they don't like certain things. They don't get enjoyment out of it. It doesn't motivate them. One of the most important things you do, and this isn't there's no magic to this, and it's not perfect, but I think what you have to figure out with individuals in organizations is, do they, going back to the why, do they understand why they're doing what they're doing, and why a particular, whether it's a role, a responsibility, something important, why it's truly important to their success and the success of the business, but more importantly, to the value that the organization provides. I think what we do too often as leaders is we tell people what to do, and we don't tell them um, how that, how what they're doing, how truly important it is, what uh, you know, what uh, what success measures it will impact. If they don't do it, how it can hurt others in the organization. Part of it is trying to figure out what motivates them and appeal to that through everything that they do. So, I mean, without a specific example, then it just go back and hit them with a stick. No, again, just kidding on that. All right, what's the next question?
This next question is when is the best time to use this technique? And I don't believe we're referring to the sharp stick technique here.
Thank you on that. I appreciate that, Joe. No, I'm assuming we're talking about the 5 steps. Yeah, this technique is something you can use at really any time. And I think it's one of those things where you're always on the lookout for opportunity. So this is not a hat you wear and then take off and put back on. Leaders need to think about themselves as always on stage. Employees are looking to leaders for many different things: setting direction, providing guidance, establishing expectations, uh, being the coach, being the mentor, creating an environment where people can thrive and grow. So the answer to that question is, the best time is really all the time. It's not about when you do it, it's about how you think. It's about how you think as a leader and how you act on a consistent basis. Hopefully that answered the question.
That wraps up our questions. If you have anything else to go over.
No, I don't think so. We're just about 2 minutes up on the before we're ready to wrap it up. I'll just remind everybody, the next webinar, March 31, 2 p.m. We will have reminders sent out to everybody. We will have up on the website. This will have, I guess, Joe, we try to get this done in 24 or 48 hours.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, 48 hours. We'll have the worksheet, we'll have the recording, we'll have the presentation. If anybody is interested in having me talk to their employees within their organization, let us know. We can always do that as well. But if there's nothing else for today, I think we'll sign off. And you have my contact information on the slide here. If there's any questions following this, please reach out. I'm here. I'll actually be in the office for the rest of the afternoon, so I'm very happy to take any questions and provide answers needed. Okay? Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.